Hello, I am Lacey Bathala, and thanks for taking a few minutes to learn a little bit more about me. I'm a data analyst and program manager at Microsoft. I love math problems, playing pool, golfing, and analyzing political polling data in my spare time. In my professional life, I believe in being accountable, keeping integrity central, delivering excellence, and being personally invested in the issues at hand. I'll use this time to briefly talk about my educational background, my professional timeline, overview my skills, and summarize a few great projects I've been fortunate to lead on at Microsoft. I didn't exactly have a conventional timeline as far as my education goes, but let me walk you through some of the highlights. I got my Associate of Arts in Mathematics in 1999, about 2 years after graduating high school. I'll be honest, I didn't really know what I wanted to do in life. I was only 17 at the time, so a bit younger than many of my peers who had their associates. So I waited a year and I joined the United States Air Force as a Russian linguist. There, I fell in love with cultures and languages and how to connect with people across the world. And I did some traveling and great experience there that has definitely benefited me even here in my Microsoft life. I recently graduated with my bachelor's in data analytics from Southern New Hampshire University. I specialized in machine learning and was definitely a student who wanted to help others to also succeed in completing their degrees. Um, that did inspire me to pursue two different certifications that I'm currently seeking. One is the MSA in Machine Learning. That is 2 exams. I'll take one here actually next week for the machine learning, and then I'll take the other next month for R programming, which I already have experience in, but I thought that would be a really good thing to have under my belt here at Microsoft. And then also the professional certificate in data science from Harvard X. That is mostly geared towards quantitative analysis. It's less on um, the actual programming language, et cetera. It's more just about the math behind all of the data science. I really enjoy both those. Those speak to my analytical and critical thinking and my love of numbers. And then I also recently applied and got accepted to several different universities for a master's in applied statistics. And I have accepted the offer from Penn State. However, I'll be honest, I'm debating whether or not just to pursue an MBA. I've put off a final decision until, um, just a few months from now, and I'll be making that final decision based off of feedback that I get from others. I just want to quickly run through some of the um, impact that each of my professional experiences have made on my career. Again, I started off professionally as a Russian linguist in the United States Air Force. This was my first foray into how to be a functioning adult in the world. Wake up at 5 a.m., you got to exercise and eat in the chow hall and get your work done, etc. Uh, Great experience as far as how to structure one's daily life and to set goals, etc. So that had a huge impact on me. Professionally speaking, outside of the military, my first job was at Thompson and Knight. That is an international law firm, and I started off as an accounting clerk there. Um, just given my maybe my age or whatever within the department, they kind of threw me into the more IT side of the accounting process. They wanted to set up an e-billing system. This was a great thing for me because I found out that I probably belonged in IT all along and not accounting. However, I definitely felt a pull towards numbers versus IT. I didn't want to really give either one up. I just didn't know how to keep both in my pocket at the same time. From there, I transitioned to another law firm called Gruber Hurst Johansson Hale and Shake. That is GHJHS that you see there on your screen. I was the accounting manager there, so I handled full cycle accounting, the reconciliation project. I did migrate us to an enterprise accounting software there, but I learned pivot tables at that law firm, and that definitely changed my world. I was totally impressed with how pivot tables could allow me to navigate data, and I just knew I wanted to learn more just from the analysis power side of it. So that was a door opener for me there. Next, I actually left the accounting world altogether, IT and everything, to become a recruiter for Robert Half International. Now, I focused on the accounting side of things. However, it was value-based selling. I needed to have business development skills. I needed to learn to interact with customers and clients on a different level than just, hey, I know you. And So I built up my skills there and actually became a training leader. So I would actually train others and coach them on how to better interact with the customers, how to build a book of business, how to maintain that book of business. And I really learned the value of the customer at that job. I cannot stress enough how much I enjoy just interacting with others in terms of how to uncover what they needed and then finding a way to create a solution for them. From there, I dove back into the accounting slash IT world with NAI Robert Lynn. Um, there, I had a hybrid role where I focused on reporting analytics, financial analysis, but then also the data management for that company and delivering actionable insights through analysis on Excel. What I did learn there is I love driving insights. I like uncovering the story behind the data. What's the trend? What's happening here? Where is some outliers? What's going on with the business? And how can we help expose this story to drive strategic initiatives? From there, I was recruited by a company to join Microsoft. And at this point, I'm a little fish jumping into well, I guess a big fish jumping into the ocean. So I became a little fish. And it was eye-opening for me because I realized that I had probably been sitting on a bunch of potential I never knew about. Um, I suddenly had access to big data and big tools. And I have spent the last 3 years learning Microsoft products such as Azure and Power BI and the Power Pivot and DAX and R programming and SQL. And I've really focused my ability to not only learn more on the data side, which I'm very driven on, but then how to connect that into the business side. How do we uncover all of the information that data can tell us to drive the strategies of the business? And that's the type of role that I'm seeking, is one where I can marry the two things that I'm most passionate about into one role. Next, I'd like to go over some skills that I have acquired over my career in which I feel that I am a subject matter expert or highly advanced in these areas. From a quantitative analysis perspective, statistical analysis, data visualization, machine learning, predictive analytics, descriptive analytics, data planning strategy, model planning strategy, and metric management. Specific to Microsoft, I've developed KPIs around volume, velocity, capacity, and consumption, and or adoption, however you'd like to call that. From a program management perspective, um, within the Fast Track organization, I established and built the rhythm of the business management process, um, use data storytelling and insights to drive strategic change, develop stakeholder relationships, reconcile budgets, handle financial analysis, working on projects through cross-functional collaboration, handling project management, and also operationalizing strategic initiatives. You'll see that a couple of examples in the projects that I bring up later. And then also creative and analytical thinking. I don't think that my day would be complete without having daydreamed about something cool that can be done to drive business. And then from a software tools perspective, these are all ones that I'm extremely comfortable with, that I could walk into at any given moment and um, perform, at a Microsoft level. So this Azure Server, Azure SQL Database, Machine Learning Studio, Azure DevOps, SQL Server. I'm an expert in Excel and Power BI, as well as SSMS and setting up ETLs through SSIS. Also very well versed with T-SQL, R programming, and DAX. So if you have any questions about those skills, we can dig into that on our call. Thanks. I'd like to dig into 6 projects that I have worked on at Microsoft that I not only feel have had an impact with Microsoft, but has also informed the things that I am passionate about and have chosen to develop my skill set around. Within my current role, our team develops the forecast for the entire support volume that comes into Microsoft for every single product that Microsoft provides. So we're talking about a forecast that is just millions and millions of rows that aggregate at different levels and different taxonomies depending on the businesses there that you can see under um, the stakeholder bold there. Now, Typically, when you look at a variance report, you're looking at forecast versus actuals. You wanted to know how that forecast performed against what actually happened. This is a very typical metric, and it is a view that is highly common across Microsoft. One thing that I wanted to expand this view to include was a forecast over forecast analysis. So not only is it historical looking from an actuals perspective, but now we're telling the business, okay, over the next 2 years, your anticipated shift is plus or minus X percentage by forecast. So you can see there at the bottom of the screen, the blue line is the original forecast, and then the green line above is the new forecast. And what you can see is at first they're pretty much one and the same thing. However, whenever we performed the new forecast, you can see that there's a shift. We're now anticipating a slightly higher volume than what we originally told them a month ago. And this can inform their hiring, their headcount, and how they align the business for supporting the customer. So the customer needs a specific language by a specific region on a specific project for a specific support topic, etc. So this is a taxonomy that we're able to allow the business to tap into, but we can now provide for them views about how their future is shifting based off of our progressive changes within our algorithms. Along with that was some anomaly and data quality detection efforts. So how good is the data that is coming to us from an actuals perspective? And then how good is the quality of our forecast once we hand that back to the business? And so the objective here was to identify product lines presenting outliers, unexpected data shifts, gaps, missing data, and taxonomy errors. Now, this was a more internally driven report because we want to know up front what is going to impact what we tell the business. The action was to automate this anomaly and data quality detection for forecasting, pre-processing pipeline, and post-forecasting analysis. There's just too much data to sit there and spin through it manually. So we needed to develop ways to automate this, and this is what I've worked on for the past several months. The stakeholder for this, again, was mostly internal. However, depending on the insights that were uncovered, we would then work with specific business units to either correct issues or um, dig into potential pitfalls, etc., to help inform how we handled our forecasts. The solution there was to expand on our internal Power BI. There's a screenshot there. I know it's hard to read, but basically what you see is some yellow and red highlights that flag these particular taxonomies and let the forecast lead know that something with this particular line of business is flagging. In this case, we're seeing trends either upward or downward in the data that don't make sense based off of historicals. And that has been highly successful within our team, very well received, and has changed the quality of our forecasts and how we output those to the team. So prior to being on my current team as an FTE, I've been in this role for a year. I was a vendor for 2 years on the O365 Fast Track team, sitting on the CSS side, however, actually reported to the engineering side. I was just cross build or whatever. So I got to work on both sides of the houses and learn a great deal about both organizations from a data perspective and what each one cares about and why they care about it. So on the CSS Fast Track side, one of the objectives was to establish a rhythm of business because one did not previously exist. It was brand new. Fast Track has only been around for a few years, I believe about 4 now. And there was no regular review of business. There was no metrics established. There was nothing. This was completely new ground for Microsoft. And so the director there tasked me with basically establishing all this. So again, the action there was to standardize KPIs across regions and products for the ROB reviews and tie that to the broader engineering objectives and messaging. Again, because I sat in both worlds, I was able to accomplish that. The stakeholders here was the fast track leadership, the engineering team, and much of our insights and data went directly to Rajesh Shah during the engineering rhythm of the business. I sat on that call, did not talk on that call, but provided insights that would drive strategic changes within Fast Track. So my solution there was to develop our very first Power BI dashboard that became the source of truth for all of our regions, because previously everybody was just using an Excel file, and establish KPIs around volume, velocity, capacity, CPE, which later became our MPS score. We switched consumption trends, throughput trend, and then consumption quota distribution. So the outcome there was each product, because FastTrack supported at the time 14 different Microsoft Cloud products, and by region, they now understood what was going on in their business, what metrics they would be measured against, and a tool on how to continuously review those measures against their quota distribution. Actually, this allowed us to do a quota distribution. Prior to that, there wasn't really much of a way to do it. And leadership could then rely on this particular dashboard to be the single source of truth during their ROBs. No longer do they necessarily have to trust a particular region or manager or someone to come up with their own Excel file based off their own queries to highlight trends or whatever. Now we had one specific data planning methodology to move on. So we were able to establish a weekly, monthly, and quarterly review, again, tying into the engineering or CXP organization. Now, the need for this, operationalizing the ROB, led to needing a reporting strategy. Again, that did not exist prior to my coming on board. So the objective was to create a centralized tool for stakeholders to self-service intelligence into the FastTrack CSS delivery business. So this was directly supporting the delivery managers and the director on the CSS side for FastTrack. My action there was to design and implement the reporting strategy, and the solution again was to come up with those same metrics, but basically these two kind of went hand in hand. The metrics that you see there on the left, standardize those across the region and products and customer segmentation, and create the dashboard in order for analysis to proliferate through the various regions and products there. I also established a regular, like an MBR template for each of the leaders to use. That way the director could rely on a typical format for each of the regional directors to provide to her in order so she could have better conversations with her leadership on what needed to happen. And you can see a brief snapshot of what one slide in that template typically would have looked like. What this did accomplish was reduced all of those ad hoc Excel reporting that each of the independent regional directors were doing. They were using queries, their own queries based off of whatever skill set they had, and this completely eliminated the need for that, and we were able to establish a very formalized, structured way of handling reporting. Now we can get into two of my very, very favorite projects, mainly because I'm very passionate about a good customer experience. Whether I'm being sold something or whether I'm being supported on something, I don't want to feel any different than when I walked in to buy the product as whenever I now need service on that product. And so in that way, I've really enjoyed sitting in the CSS organization because I am so passionate about making sure that customers get not only a good experience along with their great product, but that we are analyzing and driving strategy for that end. So FastTrack is a very unique organization in that it's not a sales organization. It sits in CSS, it's support. It's part of the subscription service that the company pays for and their cloud product. But at the same time, all the company technically has done is buy the product. That doesn't mean that they're using it. It doesn't mean that they intend to use it. It doesn't mean that they're going to use it to the fullest extent of its capability or that everybody in that company would use it. Maybe they would, maybe they won't. But, you know, of the, I think it was 75,000 tenants that I was dealing with at CSS at the time, um, the there was too many scenarios to count as to what a customer might be using or not using. But we still had goals within FastTrack. We wanted a company to from day zero to day 90 to go to at least 10% usage of their product. And this was the sort of guesstimate metric of success for a customer on what Microsoft could say, okay, they have adopted the product once 10% of their users are on the cloud and enjoying that product. Um, but the truth of the matter was that wasn't really happening everywhere. Maybe they got 1% or 2% or 3%. I mean, some companies were at 100, absolutely. But the goal of Fast Track was to move companies towards adoption. So we have, 800 escalation engineers. How do we get them to think like a salesperson, to convince the customer to use the product whenever they were never hired to do sales? They were hired to do support, which is a very different mindset and skill set than a salesperson. So the objective was to motivate escalationeers to think more like a salesperson, to influence customer usage of Microsoft Cloud products within that defined time frame, depending on a customer segmentation. So the action for me was to create a gaming system for engineers to participate in and create a tool for tracking that game process for end users and for leadership. Now, this was super cool. I hadn't seen it done anywhere else that I ever worked at. I assume maybe other parts of Microsoft use gaming, but I didn't know of any at the time. And so I did lots of independent research on how to, um, change a mindset thinking around not sales, but the soft skills needed for sales. And having been in sales myself, I did rely on a lot of my experience and the enjoyment that I got out of the sales experience to bring to the table for this particular project. So my solution was to one, design the game architecture itself. What is, just like any game, what are the rules, who are the players, what are the goals, what are the, you know, think of Monopoly, you've got a pitfall, it sends you somewhere else. What are the nuances of the game that make it fun and interesting and exciting and engaging? What are the rewards and what are the milestones for those rewards? And how do we communicate that out? And so I also designed a SharePoint site that was for the actual user. So for the game participant, the escalation engineer, to go in, track their progress, to see where their ranking was in the game, to join other games, because this was all on a voluntary basis. They didn't have to participate. However, we did have to have a really good participation rate. Created the game metrics with the engineering team, and then also created a communication plan and strategy around making sure that the game was a success. So the outcome was 800 people worldwide were engaged in this program. We did see a significant increase in engineer engagement for the purpose of Fast Track moving customers from their product to the cloud at a 10% or higher rate. The insight learned there was engineers are not hired for sales, and that they would need additional training to have those influencing conversations with decision makers. They were not comfortable with trying to persuade someone to do something. They were comfortable walking through steps on how to accomplish moving to the product or the very technical aspects of moving to the cloud. However, most were not comfortable with value-based scenario selling. I say selling, but value-based scenario influencing of that product. So if a customer had decided, yeah, I did that, you're right, I bought this SKU, it came with 3 products, I'm only using one, I have no intention of using the other 2. Well, we want, as Microsoft employees, we want that tenant addicted to all of their products, and there's a value in that. And so we don't want them to not renew their product subscription just because we simply didn't engage appropriately on the front end. So the gamification program was to incentivize those conversations, but then out of that came that we really need to train these 800 escalation engineers on how to have those conversations, which came the last project I worked on during my fast track tenure, which was delivering excellence. This was a program that I designed that would basically enhance the escalation engineers' skills to include those typical of a salesperson so that the engineer could better engage their business decision makers. The action was to create a program centered on those typical skills in order to have those influential conversations to drive consumption. Now, all worldwide engineers were required to take this training, is 800 people. And what I did was I broke that down into 12 modules focused on various things such as building trust, influencing decision makers, effective questioning, understanding different customer types, creating an adoption culture from afar. I mean, you can see there, it was just 12 different modules to speak to um, the influencing ability that an engineer would need to undertake. Um, the outcome was interactive focused training sessions. They were regionally focused because each region needs to handle a customer differently. I mean, think of Japan versus the US. The way we talk to people is completely different. And so I did regionalize this product. And then there you just see a screenshot of one slide of the building trust module. I mean, it was there, the whole entire program itself was quite huge. We had B teams to help run this. And while I created much of the content, I worked with the more highly skilled escalation engineers to build out the rest of the product line in order to complete the training. Very successful project there, something I'm very proud of. I just want to switch gears for a moment. So I'm done talking about probably my most influential projects since I've been here at Microsoft, but one of the most common things that I did on a weekly basis was provide insights to various stakeholders. That could have been leadership, that could have been management, that could have been the engineering team, just it depended on the situation and what was it, what the data had uncovered, who might be on that call. But this was just giving you an example here of something very typical that I did for Fast Track, which was present highlight and low light insights for, again, the various stakeholders. Now, this was all based off of uncovering patterns within the data. However, at that point, I would pull out specific stories that the stakeholder could latch on to really get a real world example of what the data was saying. So, for instance, for Tata Technologies, you could see some, demographic type information over there for them. You can see their usage on the various product lines, and then we can get into, the situation that even though it is specific to Tata, it's a situation that was prevalent within many other customers. It's just a pattern. We just happen to pull out Tata as the example whenever presenting this information, and then the insights that we're learning from that data there on the far right. And I don't think that any one of these examples is pertinent to this presentation, but what you can see there is the overall presentation and analytical ability needed to help the various stakeholders move through their data and their stories. Thank you so much for listening to some of my stories today and my experiences and what I've been really enjoying doing here at my time at Microsoft. I probably went a little bit longer than I had anticipated, but I am very passionate about the projects that I've worked on, the skill sets that I've gained, and the work that I can continue to do as a participating member of Microsoft success. Again, thanks and have a great day.